The doorbell rang just as Mark was seasoning his steak, but when he opened the door, it wasn't a delivery guy or a neighbor. It was two uniformed officers with cautious eyes, hands near their holsters, asking him to step outside. He blinked, calmly wiped his hands with a dish towel, and said, "You're at the right address, but the wrong guy." Then he held up his badge. For a full 3 seconds, no one moved. One officer swallowed hard. The other said under his breath, "You've got to be kidding me. He's one of ours." Earlier that afternoon, Mark Wheeler had pulled into the driveway of his sister's home in Oak Blossom Estates, a neighborhood so tightly wound it practically squeaked. He was off duty for the week, doing his sister a favor by house-sitting while she took her kids on a beach trip. His truck rumbled in like a slow storm cloud, black, clean but not shiny, and clearly out of place among the pastel SUVs and golf carts that lined the cul-de-sac. As soon as he stepped out, wearing jeans, boots, and a faded gray shirt, he felt the invisible cameras blink to life. Not security systems, neighbor eyes. He carried one box of groceries in each hand, whistling casually as he approached the front door. That's when the clipboard appeared. Actually, it was a woman behind the clipboard, though the clipboard did most of the talking. She looked like she'd stepped out of a low-budget courtroom reality show, pressed khakis, oversized sunglasses, and a permanent scowl. Her sneakers squeaked across the sidewalk like they were trained to alert squirrels of her arrival. Excuse me, sir?" she snapped, stepping directly into his path. Mark blinked. "Can I help you?" "You absolutely can. I need to know who you are, why you're here, and whether you have permission to be on this property." Mark half smiled, not out of amusement but disbelief. "I'm staying here. My sister owns the place. I'm house-sitting." She tilted her head as if sniffing out a lie. "We've had issues with squatters, you know." "I'm not squatting. I have keys, groceries, and a garage opener. If I was squatting, I'd be a pretty organized one." "That's not funny," she hissed. "This is a private community. I'm on the HOA board." "Ah. That explains the clipboard." Her eyes narrowed like she'd just been insulted in Latin. "What's your name?" "Mark." "Mark what?" He gave her a look that said, "Lady, you're already 10 steps too far." "Ma'am, I've got nothing to hide, but I'm not required to give you my last name just because I'm standing on a porch." She huffed, pulled out her phone, and started taking pictures. "I'll be contacting the HOA and the authorities. Don't move that vehicle." Mark unlocked the front door and entered without another word. He didn't slam the door behind him. He didn't have to. Some people implode on silence. Inside, he laughed a little. The steak went into the fridge. The TV came on. He didn't even look at his phone, which already had a missed call from a number tagged unavailable. He figured it was a telemarketer. Half an hour passed, and just as he was chopping vegetables, headlights swept across the kitchen wall. Not from the driveway, from the street. He peeked out and saw 2 black and whites pulling up quietly, no lights, just deliberate movement. That's when he knew Karen had actually done it. She'd called 911. Mark wasn't angry. He was something worse, professionally disappointed. He walked out onto the porch slowly and calmly as the 2 officers approached. They were young, late 20s maybe, but trained. One hand hovered near the holster. The other held a flashlight, not yet turned on. They stopped at the bottom of the porch stairs. "Sir, we received a call about suspicious activity at this address. Can we speak with you?" "You can," Mark replied. "But let me make this easier." He reached slowly into his back pocket and produced his leather badge wallet. He flipped it open. The flashlight tilted upward, and both officers leaned in. "Oh," said the one on the right. "Oh damn," said the one on the left. "I was off duty." "Still am," Mark said. "House sitting for my sister." The tension bled out of their shoulders all at once. Officer left rubbed the back of his neck. Officer right muttered something about dispatch not flagging the name. Mark wasn't finished. "Let me guess. Woman. Mid-50s. Clipboard. Voice like a weed whacker." "Yeah," Wright nodded. Said you were trespassing and acting aggressive. She's never seen aggressive, Mark muttered. That's when the porch light snapped on across the street, and the silhouette appeared, Karen, phone in hand, filming like she was recording evidence for a documentary called The War on Suburbia. Mark shook his head. You two want to stick around and see how this plays out? They didn't get the chance to answer. Karen marched across the street, still filming. Officers, thank you. I knew he was dangerous. I told you. He refused to identify himself. He's probably impersonating an officer. She raised her phone toward Mark's face like it was holy water against a demon. Officer Wright interrupted. Ma'am, this is Sergeant Wheeler with the County Sheriff's Department. Karen froze. Mark didn't move. Still want my last name? Karen looked at the officers, then back at Mark, and for the first time, her voice faltered. But I thought you were pretending. I didn't even say anything to you except hello. You filled in the rest yourself. Karen tried to backtrack, but Officer Left spoke up. Ma'am, did you report him as armed? I said he might be. You said he had a weapon, ma'am. Our body cams are recording. I was just trying to protect the neighborhood, she snapped, but even she didn't believe it anymore. Mark shook his head and turned to go back inside. Let me know if I need to file a report for harassment. The door closed behind him with the same calm finality of a judge's gavel. Back inside, he returned to his cutting board, took a deep breath, and resumed chopping vegetables. Outside, Karen was still floundering, trying to explain how she felt unsafe, in front of two officers and half the neighborhood now watching from windows. Word travels fast in Oak Blossom. Mark didn't care. He knew this wasn't the end. People like Karen don't retreat. They reload. But he was ready for it. He always was. The next morning, Mark woke up to birdsong, filtered sunlight, and the quiet smugness of a man who had already dealt with the worst the neighborhood could throw at him. He brewed a pot of black coffee, leaned on the kitchen counter, and watched the sprinklers twitch across his sister's yard like synchronized dancers. The world outside was peaceful, too peaceful, and that's when he knew it wasn't over. People like Karen didn't just back down after one failure. They festered, plotted, and came back twice as loud. At 9:12 a.m., the doorbell rang again. This time there was no law enforcement at the doorstep, just a neatly printed violation slip taped to the door, flapping slightly in the wind. Mark peeled it off and scanned it. Unauthorized occupant. Unauthorized vehicle. HOA Code 4C subsection B. Fines to be issued within 24 hours. He chuckled. No signature. No name. Just the typical cowardice of bureaucracy hiding behind paper. He crumpled it and dropped it in the trash. By 10:30, the next wave arrived. 3 people approached the house like a low-budget version of the FBI. Karen led the pack, wearing a sun hat large enough to be a wind sail and that same smug expression she always wore when she thought she was about to win. Behind her was a man in a too-tight blazer, sunglasses that didn't fit his face, and a Bluetooth earpiece he never actually used. His name was Dale. The third was a timid-looking woman dragging a clipboard like it was a leash attached to a bulldog. Mark stepped onto the porch just as they reached the front steps. Karen didn't even say hello. This is your final warning, she snapped. We've documented multiple violations and now the HOA board is involved. Mark leaned on the porch railing, coffee in hand. You brought a blazer. This must be serious. Dale spoke up, clearing his throat like he was about to read aloud in court. Sir, we have the authority to issue fines and initiate removal proceedings if the guidelines of the neighborhood are not respected. Mark raised an eyebrow. Removal? That a thing now? You folks perform evictions? If necessary, Karen interjected. We can refer it to legal. We have resources. Do your resources include reading comprehension? Mark asked, walking back into the house. A moment later, he returned with a laminated document, which he handed to the clipboard woman. Property deed. Registered under my sister's name. I'm listed as an authorized resident for the duration of her absence. Right down to the dates and emergency contact information. Want to guess who that contact is? The woman scanned it, her lips moving slightly as she read. Karen tried to snatch the paper from her, but Mark calmly pulled it back. You're not law enforcement, Karen. You don't get to confiscate documents. Dale puffed out his chest like he'd just been called short. That doesn't excuse the vehicle. It's not HOA approved. Dark-tinted windows, oversized. It doesn't meet our aesthetic guidelines. Mark smirked. So now we're policing truck colors? Dale ignored the jab. We'll be issuing an official fine. Go for it, Mark said. Make it nice and dramatic. Use red ink. Karen narrowed her eyes. You think this is funny, but we've dealt with worse than you. People like you think you can bully your way into nice neighborhoods. Mark's smile faded. Lady, I haven't bullied anyone. I've sat on this porch, watered the lawn, and grilled a single steak. That's it. You're the one who called 911 on a resident without cause. That's abuse of emergency services. Dale raised his hands. Let's not escalate. No, Mark said flatly, stepping down one step. Let's. Because I'm tired of being polite about your nonsense. Call whoever you want. Escalate it. Pull your legal nonsense. But know this, your little HOA doesn't outrank county law. And you don't get to invent rules just because someone's boots don't match your flower pots. Karen looked like she wanted to scream, but instead she muttered something about a higher authority and spun on her heel. Dale followed, huffing. The clipboard woman offered a weak smile before jogging after them. By noon, Mark was back inside reading. He could see them across the street, talking to more neighbors, pointing at his truck, waving their hands like stage performers. The neighborhood grapevine was kicking into high gear, and Mark knew what that meant. Another stunt was coming. Around 2 p.m., his phone buzzed. It was a withheld number, but he answered anyway. A soft voice introduced herself as someone from the HOA's legal advisory panel. She sounded fresh out of law school and uncertain about everything. Mr. Wheeler, I just wanted to verify a few things regarding your residency. I'm happy to answer. I'm off duty with the sheriff's department, staying here with full consent of the owner. You have a problem, send it in writing. There was a pause. Oh. Your law enforcement? Yes. Were you not told? Another pause. No, I was just given a complaint that there was a possibly unregistered male, acting in violation of community policy. Did they mention the false 911 report? No, sir. Interesting. He hung up without another word. They were trying to build a paper trail, hoping he'd slip up and give them something actionable. But Mark had played that game before, only he usually played it from the other side of the table. That evening, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the pristine sidewalks, Mark sat on the front porch again with his coffee. It was peaceful, the kind of calm that always came before a neighborhood meeting or an angry email thread. Sure enough, Karen walked by with a dog that clearly wasn't hers, just so she had an excuse to glare at him. She stopped in front of the yard. You'll be hearing from us again. I look forward to it, Mark replied. Enjoy your little vacation. It won't last. Mark sipped his coffee and said nothing. Because even if she didn't know it yet, the next move wouldn't come from her. It would come from him. The kind of move that came with official reports, legal citations, and chain of command emails. He wasn't just going to wait this one out. He was going to make sure Karen learned what it meant to provoke the wrong man in the right jurisdiction. Ask ChatGPT?